Hey, this is Jeramey with MedEdPrep, and today we're going to be going over blood flow to the heart. This is going to be a very simplified view of a really complicated process, and the big thing that you need to know is that it does get much deeper than this, but this is just going to expose you to the concept. We're going to go over the different chambers of the heart, we're going to go over the valves, and at the very end there's going to be a question so you can practice what it was that you just learned. So, to start off with, your heart is essentially a really big circle. And in that circle, it is divided up into 4 different chambers. You have a top part and a bottom part, and you've also got a left and a right. Now, you note that you're always going to be operating off of your patient's right and left, and not your right and left. So if this was somebody you're looking at, this is my right side, my right atrium is going to be right there, my right ventricle, and my left ventricle, and my left atrium. Now, the atria is going to essentially receive blood, your ventricle is going to push that out. Now, at the end of each of these chambers, there is going to be a valve. And that valve is going to prevent backflow, is the idea behind it, but it's also going to help kind of like regulate that flow. So, the way that you can remember these is T, P, V, A, and this is going to stand for the pig's big ass. And it's like, what type of ass does the pig have? A really big one. Because you have your tricuspid valve, you have your pulmonic valve, you have your bicuspid valve, which is also known as your mitral valve. They're the same thing. And then you have your aortic valve. Now, where these fit in at is your tricuspid valve, and as we build these out, we're going to be essentially be tracing the blood as it goes. So your tricuspid valve is going to be your very first one, and it is going to start right there between your right atrium and your right ventricle. So my right atrium is going to squeeze, and it's going to send blood through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. And then next thing, I'm going to have my pulmonic valve, which is actually going to open up into my pulmonary artery. And just keep in mind, this is a very simplified view of what this process actually is. So over here, your pulmonary artery is going to head on out to your lungs. And in this case, this is our right lung. And as it's pumping the blood through your right lung, eventually it's going to need to pump back out, and it's going to come into our left atrium. So, blood has left the right atrium, right ventricle, went through the lungs, become oxygenated now, and it's come over here to the left atrium. Left atrium is separated from your left ventricle through that bicuspid valve, which is just going to have those 2 cusps, or the mitral valve, however you want to look at it. Your left ventricle, at the end of that, whenever it squeezes, it's going to pump things out through the aortic valve into the aorta. Now, the aorta is the largest artery in the body. And what happens is it's going to pump out through the aorta, it's going to go through all the other arteries, all the arterioles, and eventually it's going to get small, and it's going to be pumping through some capillaries. Once it's through those capillaries, it's then going to get a little bit bigger again by going through some veins, or venules and then veins. And then those venules and veins are going to eventually lead to the vena cava. The vena cava is the largest vein. And you have the superior vena cava, which is going to be returning blood to the heart from the top part of the body. And then you have your inferior vena cava, which is going to be supplying blood from the bottom part of the body. Now, and then we're back here at the right atrium, which is then going to send the blood back through. Now, as we go through this next part, this is going to trace oxygenated and deoxygenated. In this case, we're going to have red is going to be oxygenated blood, and then we're going to have blue represent the deoxygenated blood. So, start off with my vena cava. I know that it is a vein, and I know that it is returned blood from the rest of the body, so that's going to mean that my vena cava is returning deoxygenated blood to my right atrium. My right atrium then squeezes it through my tricuspid valve to get into my right ventricle, where my right ventricle then squeezes through my pulmonic valve into my pulmonary artery to then send that blood through the lungs, where it's going to go through the capillaries and everything to go through this process of getting oxygenated, and then once it is actually oxygenated, it's going to then go through the pulmonary vein. Now, so it's really important to know that veins, they return blood to the heart, and arteries are always going to be sending blood away from the heart. So it doesn't matter if it's oxygenated or deoxygenated blood. If it's an artery, it's going away, and if it's a vein, it's coming towards. And that'll be really helpful, especially whenever you get into like fetal anatomy and stuff like that. So, but our pulmonary vein is returning oxygenated blood to my left atrium, and there's not a valve that's right here that separates where my pulmonary vein just drops into my left atrium. So, but I have this oxygenated blood in my left atrium. My left atrium squeezes, pushes it through the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve into my left ventricle, which is then going to squeeze, and it's going to squeeze a lot of blood through all the other arteries and the arterioles, and it's going to come down here to this part where it's going to be partially, it's kind of going to go through the capillaries, it's going to do that transitionary phase, going from oxygenated to deoxygenated as it's delivering nutrients to the tissues. And then I'm going to have it return through my venules and my veins up to my inferior, my superior vena cava, and then that is going to then return blood over to my right atrium to start the whole process all over again. And it's really important that you understand that this is not an anatomically correct drawing as much as it is an anatomically correct concept. This part is a deoxygenated blood, this part's the oxygenated blood. Your left ventricle is always going to be pumping out to the aorta, and it's the largest part of the heart. And your left atria, right atria, those are going to be very small, and they're just holding blood before they send it on out to the rest of it. Please remember that the pig has a really big ass, and that's going to be your tricuspid, your pulmonic, your bicuspid, or your mitral valve, and your aortic valve. And if you could remember that, you're always going to remember which valves are, and if you start from your right atrium, you can kind of work your way through the process for which valve is where. So here's going to be a question for you, and just look at it, write down your answer down there in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video. Again, my name is Jeramey, and if you like this video, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, or even leaving a comment down below. You can also always join our Discord community for a more interactive learning experience. Something we are doing is we are giving the first 300 people to sign up on the paid portion of our website 50% off of their first subscription, and you'll be able to see details for that down below. If you are a school or an instructor who's wanting to partner up with MedEdPrep, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at jeremy@mededprep.com, and you will see that link down below as well. I'll see you in the next video.